So we stand in front of Dollar Tree and basically,
such as this thing here.
all right, I'm excited to have a guest. Metal right here, of course, everyone is. Cuba is like they're under a dictator.
Thank you, guys.
Should Americans be worried about inflation, sir?
Well, I really doubt that we're going to see an inflationary cycle.
And by the way, talking inflation, the overwhelming consensus is going to pop up a little bit and then go back down. I don't know anybody, including Larry Summers, who's a friend of mine, who's worried about inflation. We also know that as our economy has come roaring back, we've seen some price increases. Some folks have raised worries that this could be a sign of persistent inflation. But that's not our view.
Making less than they did 2 years
Inflation,
ago.
you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would first say that one of the steps that we've taken as an administration is to provide a range of assistance to the American people, whether it is in the form of $1,400 checks. Caitlin, if you actually look at the numbers and the trends over the last several months, it shows that core inflation was not only below expectations, but it decelerated from last month.
You had told us at a town hall, I think it was in July, that this was just near-term inflation.
Number one thing that the president can do is help get COVID under control. That we know is the root cause of inflation and the price increases we're seeing for a range of reasons.
And finally, even as we meet to work out this challenge, it's important to maintain perspective.
Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. Now we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up.
When people go to the grocery store and a pound of meat is more expensive than it should be, we agree. That's less related to supply chain issues.
The inflation has everything to do with the supply chain. Inflation is up. It's up. The second big reason for inflation is Vladimir Putin.
All right, we are live for a midday week, the People's Talk Show. Excited to connect. Looking forward to hearing what's on your radar, what's in your mind. Of course, we cannot not talk about the primary subject matter that's being presented to us. And when you look at everything from a much bigger viewpoint, it's not as bad as it is in other parts of the world. And so we do have a lot to be grateful for. But anyway, before I dive into that, welcome to RT Live Talk, Detroit's #1 YouTube talk show. My name is Mike, the host. Looking forward to connecting. And as always, want to make sure I give everybody a chance to let their voice be heard, because this is the People's Talk Show. And so if you don't mind, hit the thumbs up button, show your support for the channel. And while you're at it, hit the share button, invite a friend or two. Hopefully they can get some information out of this, because once again, the last thing you want to do is focus on CNN, Fox, and all those other stations, because they're reading off teleprompters. Therefore, they're lying to you directly. But anyway, hope everyone's doing well. Any first-time viewers, let me know where you're watching from via the chat. And then when the phone lines open up, we'd love to hear from you guys directly. And got a couple articles to put before you guys, some videos more importantly. So hopefully you guys, got a chance to see the last, almost 2 years since the beginning of this administration, and how the narrative changes, but yet everything remains the same. And if you factor in the reason why, one of the many reasons why, is that we're experiencing such an increase in cost, would it have anything to do with the fact that within the last 2 years under this current administration, as well as the previous one, that the most currency was created in one single time in all of this country's history? Would that have anything to do with it? Probably not. Anyway, hope everyone's doing well. Before I dive any further, let me close a couple things on my end, open up a few windows, and apologize for the tardiness, but yeah, you know how I do it last minute. Thoughts is scrambling, and so I had to put something together for you guys just to let you know kind of where we're heading this afternoon. And so as you guys can see here, the highest cost of living in 40 years. So pretty much all of my adulthood years, all my life for the most part. And so a lot of the millennial generation and younger this is all we've known. And of course, for all of my people in the older generation there, you guys have a different story. And I'm sure you guys can chime in and share your 2 cents on this, because ultimately speaking, these numbers we're being given, they're bogus. But when you look at the actual price that people are paying at the pumps and at the stores and everything else in this country here, it is quite alarming. But yet, once again, I want to encourage everybody to remain hopeful and encouraged, because people in other countries are having it a lot worse than we are. So, but anyway, let's jump into, let me check in chat real quick, and then we will jump into some more things here. So we got James checking in. We got Richard, Dude Boy. What else we got? Spare a Dime. We got an alternative. Appreciate you. We got Joanne checking in as well. Roger, X, Jojo. We got Korean Silver Stacker checking in. Appreciate you. We got Jeff, Mark the Silver Shark. What is it? Got Edge Brand Agency checking in. Let me see. Ed. Okay, fair amount of people here. TB, appreciate you, man. As always. So I just put this together real quick just to kind of highlight some of the things that entails the majority of our lives. And so we got the home prices. You know, those figures are, you know, off the top of my head, so they're probably a little bit off, but you'll work with me. Travel's up through the roof. Healthcare, of course. Affordable Care Act is not so affordable after all. Food is up, depending on how you chart it, what you're buying. Used car prices through the roof, and of course, gas and fuel on average, 59%, give or take. And it has everything to do with what I put in the middle of this, and it happens to be the melting of the currency, or the diminishing of purchasing power when it comes to the being able to acquire the things that we need most. And so this thing in the very middle, as a medium of accountability, it's failing the people 100%. And then behind all of that, if you guys can see in the background, top left of the screen where it says M3 for the United States, we're at 21 trillion known Federal Reserve notes. So that's just something to take into consideration as well. But all the light is on the melting of this current currency here. But then be of good cheer. We are also in for one of the most alarming deflationary crashes that lies ahead. And a lot of people, I'm noticing more and more influencers in the financial realm talking about recession. But yet, once again, we're up against something that we've never faced in modern history, where it's every single country experiencing some type of economic slowdown at the same time. So that's more around the lines of a global depressionary style event. And then the possible response by central banks might be extremely inflationary, borderline hyperinflationary, if they choose to, which I don't think they will. But then ultimately, it will lead to what will be the creation of a whole new paradigm of how to look at this. And I'm calling this the depressed nation, or the greatest depression nations, or something of that magnitude, to kind of take it up a notch. Then that's going to head into a reset. So, yeah, anyway, hope everyone's doing well. And so let me just jump on this next little video real quick. Because I think it's, it plays into more of what I'm about to get into in a moment, because a lot of this, the younger generation, baby boomers and younger, those that are still in the workforce, they're going to experience a jolt of discomfort and pain, but yet it will pale in comparison to what the older generation that have put in the most work and the entitlements that they're expecting. They're the ones that's, I think, on the hook for the most losses, because their entire youth was put into working to put aside for some form of a retirement. And then that ultimately is going to be is good. Forgive me. I think I lost audio, playing around with some things on the back end here. So bear with me. But anyway, enough ranting. Let me get to some more things here. So here's another video I want to just play briefly, because this is what is happening in Main Street. There's two different narratives, or three rather. There's Main Street, Wall Street, and what we do with it in between. And here is a video from Main Street.
And I have never seen anything. Been on this earth for 70 years, and I have never seen anything like this. Inflation's just, running rapid.
New data reported by the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics shows the cost of living is the highest it's been in 40 years.
Basically, I'll go to the store and I get something for a couple of days. And when I get it for a couple of days, well, it used to cost me something like $20. Now I'm up to $40-some to get something for a couple of days.
It's impacting several people like Joseph McDuffie, who is retired. The total due at the register is more than he's used to paying, so now he shops at more than one grocery store to get what he needs and save a few bucks.
I never thought I'd be doing this. You know, I mean, I used to think when people did it that, you know, they just too cheap. You know what I mean? It costs them more time and stuff to you know, go somewhere and save 50 cents than to go. But I find myself doing it now, you know, because everything is just so doggone high.
There you have it. Just that gentleman there in his 70s. He said he's never experienced anything like this in his lifetime. So assuming he's forgetting the 70s time frame, but once again, new era, as well as he was still working then. So his overall cost, I'm sure, was a lot different than they are now, being that I'm assuming he's retired. So almost a doubling of everything he's going out for, and that's just in his basket. So that's what's happening on Main Street. But as we know, this is kind of where things are heading. We all anticipated this. That's why right now, as I've always said, whatever it is you're looking to purchase, everything is ultimately the cheapest it's going to be right now, because they're going to continue to increase in price until there's a outright monetary default. Therefore, the credit markets will seize up. Banks will probably come to some type of halt. The people's accessibility to get cash will be diminished, if at all removed, and all the problems we have from there. So anyway, just a little visual way to put together, share my 2 cents on this. But let's jump into some other things here. And so put together something else I wanted to just put out there. So, of course, the mainstream narrative, they know who they love to blame. We all know well before now what's really going on. But Biden inflation, we had prices way before Putin came around, is this primary argument. But if you look at the area, the shaded in red there, this goes back to the beginning of this administration. And also, let's not make sure we not let off the prior administration off the hook, because he signed his signature on the first CARES Act, which was the first 1 point whatever trillion. So if you look at this spike upward of this inflationary CPI numbers, and we know they're extremely low, they're fake. That's fake numbers, but let's just run with their numbers. You look at the shaded area here, this right here, I wonder if this has anything to do with the trajectory from that same time frame. We had the complete shutdown of the global economy and that short, small gray bar there, but the response from a monetary standpoint. So we had approximately, we were trending up 2019, all the way up here, and it was at $15 trillion. And so from that moment there, the CARES Act, bam, the CARES Act right here, bam, see that little jump right there, bam, that one jump there, that's another 1 trillion. And then the American something other act, and bam, another one. And then the American Build Back, whatever the next one was, bam. And then here we got bam. So I'm making light of this. But as you guys can see, along with those blips upward, every blip here can kind of be pointed to a blip here in the total M3. And this is just what we know. This is just what's on the surface, according to information given to us. But then once again, these numbers are bogus, just because you can't trust no figures given to us at this point, because all of the media, all the statistical boards, they're all in on this. They know what's really going on. And so this is just something to pay attention to. So I thought I would point that out to you. But anyway, reason I bring all this up is always just because I want to make sure I highlight what's ultimately going down. And that is the global, systemically important shift happening in the monetary realm that will always come back to the surface, because there's no way of all governments coordinating an actual outright default on their populace by the currency creation, as well as all the other things that go into it, without there being some type of problem. And these are things that happens once the monetary order shifts out of one hands into the next. So that's a part of what we're witnessing here. So, okay, enough of that. All right, here's some headlines here, and then I'll keep moving forward. And so this is something that caught my attention. Cost of living crisis. So cost of living is going to be the primary three words that we're going to hear a lot about. And of course, it's because of Putin from the media. But in actuality, it's just the end of one monetary system, how it always ends. Debt leads to war. War leads to debasement. Debasement leads to outright theft and confiscation of everything people's work for. Okay. Cost of living crisis, the pensioners. This is what, as I always mentioned before, this is something that's always on my mind, because the people who put in the most, they're the ones that have the most to lose. The pensioners forced to use food banks and turn off their central heating. And this is as we're heading out of winter. And this is the narrative out of the UK area. So Sky News, of course, from the UK. And it just shines some light on a lot of people. And the very first video I showed, or second video I showed you, was a 70-year-old gentleman here in the US talking about just concerns of his price doubling. And then we have another young lady here talking about it's depressing. Says 24-year-old as tears well up her face and it's getting worse. So this is just stuff I just can't ignore this type of stuff because this definitely touches my heart a lot. Here's another one. Cost of living. This is here in the U.S. Cost of living deepens as inflation hits 30-year high. And this is referring to out of the UK. But CPI numbers going berserk globally. Doesn't surprise anybody. Okay, so these are the developed nations. These are the headlines from the developed nations. They are of concern because most people are blindsided. People who tune into channels like this, you're awake and aware. And you realize that as this shift occurs, conventional financial knowledge and conventional financial wisdom is outdated. It died officially as the great financial crisis because everything from that point on was monetarily injected in a very dangerous way to prop the system up. It was not about protecting the savers, investors. They've already made it clear with negative yield, negative interest rates, ultimately, that borrowers are screwed. And so along with that, should the different model of unconventional wealth preservation methods have come into play severely at this current moment. And so one thing I've been paying attention a lot to is how on an international stage, even, from the video I did yesterday with Lahiru, I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on what's happening in Sri Lanka. But he basically called off 5 or 6 events of things that occurred in Sri Lanka that's happening in every single country. It so happened to have hit the Sri Lankan central bank first because it's a small country. Nobody really cares about them in a grander scheme of things. And their reserves are running low. So on an international stage, they're, bankers and institutions are encouraged to have reserves of diversified assets from other currencies. And some central banks have gold. On a domestic level, when it comes to your personal finances, we're told to save for a rainy day and invest for our financial futures, all in the same currency that the central banks have used as weapons against us. So if on an international stage, people are encouraged to have reserves, which are a diversified basket of assets, including for central banks, metals, it's only practical and wise for people on a domestic level when it comes to their financial matters, in my opinion, to have reserves as well of a variety of items that would help sustain you in times of uncertainty. And that includes precious metals, calories, ammunition, energy, and a lot of other things we've talked about on the channel. So just want to put that out there just because I think that's something to continue to remind and encourage everybody about. So anyway, keep it moving. A couple more articles here, then I'll stop ranting, open the phone lines. And so, as I mentioned before, we're very blessed. If you're in a developed world, you're very blessed to be in a position you're in, regardless of how things might be coming a little bit uncomfortable. Because if you look around the world right now, a lot of other countries. So here's something from Lima, Peru. Not sure if people have been up to date on what's happening in Peru. I've been seeing some videos, and here's one here where, as you guys can see, people are in the streets. Whether it's this week, last week, at the start of 2022, there's been more people out in them streets letting their voice be heard and their pain felt due to the increased cost of living. The overall ability of people to sustain themselves in their currencies is failing. And as I showed you guys in the beginning, that currency that's melting, that's happening in every country around the world. And so there's the haves and the have-nots. And the majority are the have-nots, which are people who are completely monetarily illiterate in a sense where they don't know what the difference between currency and money. And this is what happened. People who, bought into the system or paid no attention to the events happening around them, they're in the streets right now. And we see how things are shaping out there. So this is in Peru, but it just doesn't stop there. Let's keep it on going. Here is something what's happening, a demonstration apparently in Italy. So right now in Italy, people are in the streets letting their voice be heard, letting their pain be felt. Why? We're being told excessive crackdown due to the health situation as well as the euro, basically draining people's wealth there as well. So these are just two places. And then, of course, yesterday, the video I did with Lahiru, Sri Lanka is another one. Keep it in mind. So anyway, that's just what it is, people, on the surface. Now, let's get into some more details. Let me share something with you if I can. Let me see if I can find it. Give me 1 second here. I had more stuff up here. I had more windows open, but I might have to find it. Okay, so here's just more of John Williams shadow stats as of yesterday in reference to what we're being told in comparison to what people are feeling. The red line, 8.5. You take an adjustment back to 1980s, the real rate they calculated, it's closer to 17, 16, 17, 18. And then as I showed you, when it comes to real world items, the ones that we need and use on a regular basis, it's higher 20s, maybe 30s and beyond, depending on what category. This is not going anywhere until that deflationary crash occurs, which will be the start of the recession. And depending on how long they let that last, it will ultimately transition into a depression. And if they don't respond with more of the spigot being turned on, it will usher in that reset, which will be the announcement of some other world alternative medium of exchange on international stage. And then domestically, as more CBDCs will officially be required, because the commercial banking sector, I was actually today, I had a chance to speak with somebody, and they were saying how they have a friend working for the banks, and they are, since the beginning of this year, they have begun dialing back on employment because they're going automated. They're automating everything to where they're basically cutting staff because they're setting up everything to have it automated to where there will be maybe one or two people at best inside of your little commercial bank or whatnot, because it won't be needed. So that's just more proof of somebody who was on insight who told a friend of mine that that's what's happening. So yeah, anyway, keep it moving. So let's keep it going. So I want to share with you some other things. And as a result of all this, they're pointing the blame on a foreign nation and the supply chain, everything like that from the video we saw earlier. For those that might came in late, go back to the first 2 minutes. You'll see a nice little progressive buildup of how the narratives changed amongst the corrupt and contaminated politicians. But here are some figures here that just makes you think about how good it's been for Wall Street. And so here's just a little snippet I grabbed off Twitter, and they're coming from more progressive politicians that are like, blame the rich, is their fault, let's tax them type of thing. But I just thought I would bring some figures to you since all of this jumped off over the last 2 years with the expansion of the monetary base and the financial products that were created to buy and prop up all the Wall Street institutions. But Amazon up 75%, Netflix up, Nike's up, FedEx up, all the publicly traded companies that were labeled essential, they did extremely well. And so as of now, price hikes. So this is from Bernie Sanders. He was saying that this year alone, Amazon went up 16%, Netflix subscriptions up 10%, Nike went up 10%, FedEx went up 10%. And he says, don't cite inflation, cite corporate greed. So they once again shifting the blame towards the private sector as if they're in the business to, not turn a profit. Not the primary excuse there. Is how currencies funneled through them. Corporate buybacks basically makes their companies a lot more profitable. And then along the way, it's only natural you pass on cost of putting stuff together to the consumers. So that's the typical way things flow. But of course, they want to blame the uber wealthy. But it's just one of the things where it pays to be on the inside or to have inside information or to have a specialized skill set where you can profit off all of this. So I'm not mad at these people one bit. They do what they got to do. It's unfortunate that the majority who are awake or asleep, rather, they're the ones that suffers. But here's just more numbers here. Since corporate profits above pre-pandemic averages. So we know the pharmaceutical game was strong because of those things. But 3,000, 1,500, 400, 300. So all those CEO and board members and shareholders have done extremely well at the expense of those who did not have shares in those companies. But there will come a day of reckoning where your average investor who is not aware on the importance of diversifying out of things that are overly inflated, it will come back to bite them in the butt as well. And real quick, I shared something earlier on the, let me grab this, copy, save. So I shared something earlier that I wanted to highlight right now because let me let me grab it 1 second. Give me 1 second. I'll put it up here just because I thought this was just another way of looking at the ultimate transfer of wealth that's going to take place when this next deflationary crash occurs, because everyone who thinks they actually own shares in corporations, there may not, a lot of the companies that are in existence now may not be around when the shakeout occurs. And so here is the actual visual aid here, but this is the Dow to Gold ratio. And I grabbed this off the Twitter sphere, but this red line here just signifies the possible correction that might take place. And so this first one is the Great Depression. The second one here, it happens to be the 70, 80 time frame. And then we have the little blip right here. This little blip from here to here. This was just a 2020 correction. And what they're saying is based upon a trend, and if you're in a TA, if you know, technical analysis, you put that line here. They're saying that there's a worst case scenarios when everything hits the fan, that the Dow to Gold ratio will be dropping down to 0.5. And so I put that out there in the Telegram sphere, and people are saying, what does that mean? Whatever. But ultimately, how many ounces of gold to buy one share of the Dow? So he's basically saying that it will go lower than the lowest of lowest. So back in the 70s time frame, it was when a Dow was doing what it was doing, gold shot up to that, was $800 an ounce. That could have bought you a share of the Dow, which was approximately 30 companies, but now I think it's like 27. And if you go back to the Great Depression, when the Dow Jones was, like 100 or 200, percent or whatever, you could, it would cost you maybe 2 ounces of gold. So as we see here, he's saying that a half an ounce of gold might end up allowing you to get in and buy one share of the Dow. And so that's basically just a transfer of wealth. So it goes to show if you price things in gold terms, other items will get cheaper during times of crises moving forward. So just a little something right there. And I'm not saying this is, likely, but it is a possibility for the most part. And that's that deflationary crash I keep talking about, that it's inevitable just because the way things are set up is too priced. It's overpriced. Everything has to correct. Okay, keep it going. And so what's the solution? What's the solution to all this? How do you fight Bidenflation? How do you fight Bidenflation? Let me share. So for those who are coming in late, how do you fight Bidenflation? This is, increased cost of everyday life goods and services. How do you fight that? Oh, let me show you that. Let me give you the answer. This is how politicians like to fight things. Let me put this on here.
Saw today's inflation data. 70% of the increase in prices in March came from Putin's price hike in gasoline. We need to address this challenge with an urgency that demands. That's why I've called on Congress to move immediately to lower the cost of families' utility bills, prescription drug bills, and more, while lowering the deficit to reduce inflationary pressures. And that's what we've done. We lowered the deficit by $300 billion so far.
So that's you factor in their agenda. That's a part of the Build Back Better plan. So they're talking about passing some legislation that creates more currency, and on top of the excess taxes that they're looking to try to siphon off of the working class. So that's how you solve a problem. You create more of the problem. You compound the impacts of the price increases by creating more currency, further expanding the monetary base to the point where it is what it is. This is the world we're living in. So once again, if they're going to continue to create more units of destruction, you might want to take those units of destruction and put them in some things that can preserve and protect while there's still chance or still opportunity. So anyway, that's enough of me ranting. Let's open the phone lines. Let's talk. Curious to hear what's on your radar, as always. For those that are tuning in, if you are new to the channel, definitely make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell. So hopefully you're notified when we do go live and you get up to date with everything. So I'm probably going to bring back the text messaging as well, where, if you guys are interested, I'll shoot you a text message. It's just a little free service that allow you to plug in via the interview. So All right, let's get the phone lines open. I'm curious to hear what am I missing out there. And of course, there's more stories that I'll be able to cover during one live stream, but I'll do the best I can. And that's why it's the People's Talk Show. So give you guys a chance to let your voice be heard. All right, let me see here. Or highlight at Rethinking a Dollar to stand out, and I'll try to answer it. Let me see here. Going through here, I see a lot of back and forth. Furious says, what is BlackRock? Oh, yeah, BlackRock. One of the biggest investment companies in the U.S. that's a part of the deep state global cabal banking organizations that are responsible for giving guidance to the banking sector as well as the presidents. And so we got Mr. Larry Fink, who is the head of it, who's behind the ESG, that new vehicle to further tax humanity, and all disguised as the earth is heating or cooling or whatever they're trying to do with it. Hello, Carlos. Where are we calling from?
Hey, how you doing, Mike? Let me money bags, Killeen, Texas.
What's going on, my man? Give me a quick thought. What's in your mind?
Not too much. Hey, I just sent you something real quick to your Twitter about this ISO 200.
Yeah.
They bring up that they're talking about trying to incorporate it in November of this year.
Yeah.
So you might want to take a look at that, and I'll let you go ahead.
Bet. Good deal, man. I will pop it open right now and go from there. Appreciate you, man.
No problem. Thanks.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. So let me just chime on this a little bit. So here is the article here from Pay Me Money Bags. So I am familiar with this slightly. And so this November, there will be the official rollout of the rebranded SWIFT payment network that will be utilizing a new APK, which is like, for those it's like a software application that is a plug and play where you can plug it in and gain access to it via this easy, transferable, short code, whatever. And they're connecting the different central banks utilizing the blockchain mechanism. So what we've been using up until this point, or what the SWIFT has been using up to this point, is the very old archaic, ledger technology that's outdated. So they're utilizing the blockchain space, which is what I believe was originally intended to do. And they're going live with their beta. So the beta is live right now. So February, the beginning of March. So March 1st. And so I was going to do a video on that, but I figure I jumped to it now. But on March 1st, February 28th, the Fin Plus pilot service on February 28th went live. So there was an opportunity for a select amount of predetermined central banks to connect to this network here to test it out. But then in November, as Pay Me Money Bags mentioned, it goes live. So it says here, the Fin Plus CBP are starting your testing journey. The Inflows Translation Service became available for testing the Fin Plus pilot future environment last November. The service will go live in August, of this year on an opt-in basis, on a mass basis in November 22. And so when you look at this, so here's the actual institutions that's in on this. And so this right here should be very concerning. If I can zoom in, that's probably as far as I can go. Can I save image? So I want to zoom in because this is important. Let me try to do this because I've been meaning to do a video on this, because what we're being presented with differs from what is actually happening behind the scenes. So this payment network here, let me show this. Here we go. This payment network here shows that this is what's happening right now. This is currently who's live. So as of February, whatever, these are some smaller banks that went live. So we got, on the SWIFT right now, we got not on the SWIFT, but implements the API. The API. We got the China SIPs and Swiss Bank SIC, not on the SWIFT as of right now. But to go back out into the future, China and Russia will be interconnected through that API or the APK, whatever I just mentioned, that network. They're going to be connecting to the FedWire system, by 2025. So all the noise and all the distractions and stuff we're hearing now is more so it's a illusion. It's a distraction, because according to this map here, based upon what we're being presented with, China and Russia have already agreed to connect their systems. So that'll be probably the BRICS infrastructure system that will plug into the Fedwire system, which will go through that API network there. And this is a part of that whole ISO 222 adoption. So as of right now, they're making it seem like it's a East versus West Coast, Ukraine, Russia, China, they're the bad guys. But no, they've already agreed that by 2025, they're all going to be plugged in. So here we got Russia here. It says by 2025, 80 systems targeting to be on ISO 20022. Of these, 50 plus are on the SWIFT network. So out of the 80 systems that are on target, 50 will be on by the time it gets to this point here. And of course, it has Fedwire and the chips USDC. So this is something that we haven't even gotten to yet, because it's Q4 of 2023, the chips USD system. And that possibly, this is just me talking, that could be the digital, USDC, Fed coin, whatever type of mechanism, because the Fedwire is old. It's already operational now. This was introduced, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. Just a updated version of the whole SWIFT system utilizing Fedwire. So here we go. Here's all the stuff that was being presented. We got the UK in here. We got Russia in here. We got Chile in here. So Saudi Arabia is on here. So they're plugging into a world system, and the SWIFT is still a part of the equation. Now, whether all this plays out, time will tell, but this is what's going on behind the scenes. So pay me money bags. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. But that's just a brief rundown as to how we're being presented with one thing, but in actuality, they got everything worked out behind the scenes, because barring some type of changes, it's my opinion that they want all the systems, whether it be a BRIC-led, AIIB, World Bank, BIS, all that stuff. They want them all plugged in. And that's the whole point of blockchain, to make it interoperable, heading us towards that one world, one region, one currency that's a part of our future. So anyway, keep it going, my people. And we know says there's a battle between ETH and XRP for that bridge. That's a possibility. I don't keep close eyes on what is presented to us as a battle between ETH and XRP. But by now, I'm sure more people would be hopefully willing to admit that whether it's ETH or XRP, if you didn't write the code, then you don't really control much. You might be a stakeholder because you got a bag of these coins. But ultimately, when it's all said and done, these bridges that they're building, they're going to cut off the exits for the average Joe out there, because doing a reset, when they said you're going to own nothing and be happy with it, that means that any digital representations of things you think you own, I think there's going to be some issues with you being able to conduct business with those things, given the fact that they don't want you to prosper off this monetary reset. That's just my opinion. Keep it moving, though. Cryptos all have a back door. Mark the silver sark. So, yeah, I hope you guys had a chance to catch David Morgan's interview on the crypto conspiracy thing, whatever he does there. That gentleman who he's talking to, I think he's fairly knowledgeable to where I would take what he says rather than just believe the hunky-dory stories that people want us to believe, saying that, you trust the code, all that stuff like that. No, I just wish there's a way to reach more people so that they can begin questioning the narrative that we're being fed, because people believe that the code is your friend, but yet, I think that's a part of the feature built in to establish confidence in people being willing to go digital, because you can trust it because you can see it on the ledger, you can verify it, it's transparent. Okay, don't you think they want you to be transparent? But they're not going to be transparent with the Fed coin. Not at all. Anyway, another one here. Reggie Middleton already has an IP patent grant by the U.S. and Japan. East Pro, that's 100%. And so I do follow Reggie knowledgeable brother, man. I'm happy for him and his success to this point. But my concern is that it's one man up against Goliath. And unfortunately, he don't have enough stones, in my opinion, to handle Goliath in this current environment, because Goliath is just not the SEC, which is who he's had a battle with before. Goliath is the global monetary structure. And so my personal opinion, and this is where we're going to find out, and I hope I'm wrong, but in times of uncertainty like we are in now, the rule of law and the justice system will not be something that you can rely upon during a predetermined great reset, because CBDCs and all of Reggie's patents are needed. The infrastructure is needed to pull off the greatest heights of humanity using the blockchain for digital ledger transaction, because everything that they're doing on a ledger, it ultimately boils down to it being incorporated into your biometric identity. So it's all interconnected. And so they're not going to let one man stand in their way of bringing in a one world government with the one world coin and all that stuff like that. So my point is, I would assume that Reggie's going to have a hell of a fight, and only by the grace of God will he be able to stand against those guys in the court of law, just because the court of law is ultimately corrupt. If it went to the Supreme Court, we witnessed what the Supreme Court is all about. They're all on the take. So who can you trust in the midst of a reset? Nobody. And that's why I think Reggie's going to have an uphill battle. But I hope I'm wrong. But if you watch that interview with David Morgan and the guy he interviewed who gave the information about there being backdoors to the blockchain, that guy is a patent holder of social networking. So he was saying that he originally created Facebook, but Facebook went to court. And even though the judge said, you're right, you own the rights to this, it was dismissed and Homeboy got nothing. And Facebook is now Meta. So money talks, BS walks, and unfortunately, rule of law, when stuff hits the fan, I wouldn't hold my breath on that stuff, man. All right, let's keep it moving. So I apologize for a little long rant, but I would like to be optimistic when it comes to utilizing computer code, but yet when I believe computer code was created for this exact moment in space to create this transition out of the old and into the new, it's hard to just run with that and just say that, oh yeah, it's going to be this great, it's going to be all that. No, because how do you get to that next world order unless you have something that people would be willing to accept the same way the Federal Reserve came into existence, because people bought the narrative of they're going to disrupt the banks. There's going to, 12 central banks scattered around the world, decentralize things, and, we can trust them. Okay, look where we're at now. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Mike, how you doing? It's Chapo from Philadelphia. How you doing, man?
Chapo, doing good, man. Give me a quick thought. What's in your mind?
Hey, just quick. I was just curious. Like, do you think it's more of a concern that they track our transactions, or do you think they're more concerned with us being able to track their transactions? Like, as in the government, like what's the biggest I guess utility or tool that these guys have been using for corruption? They've been these nonprofits, right? Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No,
I was going to say the biggest tool they use is complete control of every entry and exit to every system in our lives. The internet is used for a purpose in this exact moment in time to execute this blockchain space. The banking sector, central banking, politics, entertainment, every avenue of our lives is filtered with this note here that they're losing, that they're getting rid of this old one and bringing in the new one, because every entry and exit point has to do with money. And so long as they control the money, they control the people who run the boards of these companies. That stuff talks, in my opinion.
Right. But I mean, if you look at currently, like what's going on right now, I mean, we're sending trillions of dollars over to Ukraine. Right. And how are they stealing that money? They're not stealing that money by taking it directly from us. They're stealing that money through NGOs and stuff like that.
Correct.
And, and I just guess my question with these CBDCs is like, if, aren't we, isn't the goal of digital assets or whatever you want to call it, cryptocurrency, isn't that to be your own central bank in the sense? Like, why do I have to deal with a central bank if I can go around them, I guess, and I can send money directly to peer-to-peer without using them. And I guess I don't know, maybe your response would be like, well, how do you withdraw the money or stuff like that? And is that what you? How would you respond to that?
No. So when I first came across the whole blockchain protocol, disrupt the banks, be your own bank, was at a time before it was transitioned to everybody wanting mass adoption from the institutions. Now the institutions are in it, they control it, they run it, and just like with Celsius, most recently, them restricting the entry points and the ability to earn interest because the Wall Street crowd is not happy with that. They're rewriting the rules. And so it used to be your own. Now it's like, well, in order for my bags to pump, we need institution to get involved. But it's unstoppable because they can't stop it. It's too big. Okay. They know where the miners are at. Every country, if they were able to crack down on Russia by cutting them off from the SWIFT system and having 10, 20 nations impose sanctions on them to call themselves hindering their financial access to the system, it's good to say those same nations can come together and say, hey, we want you to come, make sure every area in your country that's high energy, that's probably the miners, shut them off. And of course, the blockchain is not going to go nowhere because all it takes is one computer, but it poses risk to the security of the network to where it'd be easier to hack Bitcoin. You hack Bitcoin, that's confidence right there. So that changes the game as well. So that's all a possibility in the future, I think. So the technology is in its beta phase. It's in its beta phase right now. Everything we're dealing with now is just in a beta 1 version. We haven't seen nothing where this could go. But the question is, who will control it? And right now, I'm not too sure, the average coder in their mom's basement is going to be that guy because Ethereum, Binance, all these companies, they're all in bed with the World Economic Forum, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but hey, that's just me.
Well, yeah, I know, I agree. But, it's everyone says that, America's imposing sanctions on, or, NATO's imposing sanctions on Russia. And I kind of think it's the other way around, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it doesn't seem like America's really calling any shots, or NATO's calling any shots these days. But I don't know. Maybe, do you feel that? Do you agree with that? Or
that's
like,
that's
like,
the.
Do you see the? I was just do you see like these new things coming into play, like Basel III or like the BRICS? Like, do you see that as positive, or how do you view that?
I would like to say it could be a positive, and that's why I always say I hope I'm wrong, but I'd like to be a realist rather than a hopium, and like one of those guys that say just wait, Trump's coming back in office, he's going to fix this. We got Jasara, and this, like the Bible says something different. Like that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of this stuff. We're all living through it in real time, but I know where this goes in the very end. So that's what makes it easier for me to say, right now we're having a mass takeover and a restructuring of the governments. This is all about governance, in my opinion. That's why the World Government Summit met last week. And what they talked about was how to be more inclusive as a unit rather than have sovereign borders. And I see where this is going. And that's where I'm like, the blockchain crypto space, it speeds things up because ultimately it's about surveillance as well as, your bodily autonomy being taken away from you with those things that they're putting in arms nowadays. So things are playing off in a very evil fashion. And so I would like to say the BRICS are, they're disrupting things, but ultimately it's going to end up being the same thing because China and Russia, they got the same injections. They got the same, passports on your phone. They doing the same thing. So how disruptive is it? How much of a power shift is it really? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's just
one
me.
Thing real quick.
Yeah.
Go ahead. So I just one thing I noticed. I don't know if you saw or not, but there was a big bust in like El Salvador of some MS-13 guys. Like 6,000 members or something got arrested recently.
Okay.
And if you follow one narrative of the Ukraine situation, or in my opinion, I think they're actually taking out a lot of these Azov guys, right, and these Nazi guys, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it's just very interesting because if you look at MS-13, right, and you look at Azov Nazis, what is their background or what is their religion? They actually pray to Lucifer. A lot of people at MS-13 practice Santeria, right? And then a lot of people, the Azov are Nazis as well, which is Luciferian. So it's just very interesting to me that it seems like almost like a cleansing of these guys is taking place on Earth. And I don't know, that's just
Right.
But I don't know.
No, and that's real. So
yeah.
there are events like this that give me a sense of like, okay, like, you know, it makes it hard to read into because, you know, and mind you, on the Telegram side of things, I post videos that I look into just dark down the rabbit hole stuff about, you know, people who harm kids, and I post all that stuff because I'm like, okay, you know, there are some people being exposed, but is it intentionally to cause more of a distraction and more division amongst the people? Or is it like some people behind the scenes that have good intentions and have a desire of disrupting this global takeover? And it could be sincere. Like, that's where it's like, part of me believes that, you know, not everybody out here works for the enemy. There are some good people out there that fear the Lord and they want, you know, the Lord's, you know, way to be done on earth as it is in heaven. But I just take everything with a grain of salt because I know that all this is temporary. This is not my permanent home, and we have a final destination that's much more glorious than what we're experiencing now, because we'll never have justice, equality, and righteousness on our own in this life because mankind has fallen. We can't redeem ourselves. You know what I'm saying? That's just me, man. I preach forever, though.
So real quick,
Yeah.
do you think that then, I guess, like, you know, going back to the Bible, it's just like, you know, like, do you ever think that, like, the only way that we can get out of this is the return of the King, or do you think it comes hand in hand that, like, the return of Jesus, like, that is that the only way we get out of this? I guess is my point.
No,
I think no. Okay.
I don't think that.
Okay.
I think that's an escape. That's like an escape clause. You know, and that's just like a lot of hymns. You know, when I get to heaven, life will be. No. According to the scripture I read, you know, God promises us that we are able to have life and to have life more abundantly. And to me, what that says to me is that it's possible now that in the midst of all this chaos around me, God is able to make things completely just go, you know, like stuff not even impact you. There's people out here who are having the best time of their lives and they're being more abundantly blessed and prosperous than any time, because typically God's children, he usually take care of his own in times of chaos. Don't mean there won't be pain, but then again, everything works out for his glory. So me going through what might be perceived to you as hard times, it definitely brings him glory in some form or fashion, because it gives me a testimony in this life and in the next. So I don't think you have to die in order to have your best life, is what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? I think God is able to do some awesome things through his church today, in my opinion.
Right. Awesome. Okay.
Hey, man, appreciate
you.
you.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate you. All right.
Yep.
God bless.
No problem, boss. Thank you. Yeah, man, that's just me. That's where God, you know, has me at this current moment. And you know, as always, let me just go ahead and just share, let me just go ahead and share a little something that, you know, of things that truly excites me. You know, it may not excite everybody else, but to me, it matters. And so I want to just share with you something real quick that I've been meditating on. And so Luke 9, Luke 10 are just two chapters that I've been really hitting these boys hard, because I'm not saying obsessed. I would like to be obsessed with, because I have a genuine interest and curiosity and love for the word, because I have an obsession with it anyway. But that's one thing I think, like, you know how some people say, you know, too much of anything is not good for you. I don't believe that. I think, you know, you can never have too much word in your system. Anyway, to go on the very bottom, the very last sentence, it's been on my mind. And so this whole little segment here, the cost of following Jesus, these words in red, man, something else. Anyway, I encourage you, if you haven't, I encourage you to dive into it, because there's life and power in these words. But here's one thing that stood out to me, that jumped out the page to me today. Are you fit for service? And that's a question I want to end with today. Are you fit for service? And so this is in regards to Jesus basically telling people to drop what you're doing and pick up your cross and follow me. And two people he called two people in this little segment here, and both of them came with an excuse. And then the very last one, he said, still another said, I will follow you, Lord, but first let me go back and say goodbye to my family. And so he said, Jesus replied, no one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service. And I'm like, wow, fit for service. That's like, if you pick up your cross and you follow him daily, that means you're making a deliberate effort to pursue his interest ahead of your own and his leading to become a follower of his, i.e. disciple. And so that means you've been summoned. And if you've been summoned to work for the king, that comes with it a certain amount of attention that needs to be paid towards this operations, because he got some good things going on and it's happening right now. And earlier on in this segment here, he talks about the importance of needing to pray to the Father. Why? Because the harvest is ripe. There's people out here right now that need to hear about this message here. And the message happens to be surrounded by, or it's encompassed by what's called the good news. And the good news is it's life-changing, because I still haven't wrapped my mind around it. May never be able to, but I'm gonna try. But the good news is the announcement that when Jesus, the person, the Son of God, the individual, returned as a descendant of David, the kingdom lineage continued. And as on his return, he himself basically became the access point and the doorway, the truth, the way, and the life to the Father. And that's the return of his government. And the statement itself is simple. His very first statement he said or stated to humanity at this time was to repent, for the kingdom of God has returned. And so if you take that, dive it down, it goes a lot deeper. But what stood out to me, which I want to make sure I talk about, was, ask yourself a question. Are you fit for service? Are your intentions, are your desires in line with what he wants for your life? And that's where I'm at right now, trying to figure this out, because I want to be fit for service, because that service has to do with these last three words. Are you fit for service in the kingdom of God? And that's the government or the governance issue that humanity is dealing with right now. And so I'm going to put together a visual aid tomorrow talking about how, like right now in this current time and space, politicians are not ashamed to tell you about their governance model that they're working towards. It's called the New World Order. But then again, they're reordering anew this current world structure. At the same time, there is another government presence in this world, and it happens to be in the spiritual realm. So it's only by faith. Only people who believe will be able to interact with that realm. And that's another dimension. It's another way of thinking. And the only way you can access that is through the actual source itself, which happens to be the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And your relationship, the strength of your relationship with the King is subject to your ability to understand and discern these words. And so I just want to encourage everybody that we all have a part to play in the bigger picture. And we need to all be fit for service. And service is the kingdom of God. And that's the government that we are instructed to remind people of, that's currently present. And to my caller who called in last, in reference to the Bible and, going to heaven and stuff like that, that's great. That's great. My name is already written in the Lamb's Book of Life. That's fine. But that's not our final destination, because according to the scripture, we return to a renewed earth. So earth is my home, not heaven. So I'll be happy to go there, but we're coming back to something new here. But your reward in that transaction there is based upon your service. And so I'm looking forward to just, sharing my 2 cents on service for the kingdom of God, which is a government that's present right now. We have access to it. And with that, I believe, comes a lot of opportunity to be a difference maker for people's lives. So anyway, I can go on and on, but I'm not. But as always, people, I appreciate everybody for blessing me with your presence. It's always good to connect with like-minded people. And here's a question. Are you fit for service? I'm going to leave you with that. Be blessed, be safe. Peace.